In Season 4, Lloyd points out that the train station has been a godsend for the Dutton family. Located in an isolated region with no local law enforcement agencies for miles and no witnesses in sight, the train station has been treated as a dumping ground of sorts for whenever the Dutton family needs someone taken care of. Despite the Dutton family's murderous ways being common knowledge, the exact location of the train station has been kept a family secret. Well, not really a family secret. Beth and Jamie were believed to have been kept in the dark about the coordinates. Why? While we cannot explain the exact reason for Beth, Jamie was the family attorney and it made sense that he stayed indifferent to the location. That being said, Casey, Rip, John, and Lloyd were the only people who actually knew where the train station was. So Jamie shouldn't have known about this mysterious place that the family had gone to great lengths to conceal from him, right? Wrong! The train station was where Beth found John's body and where they believed that Jamie had killed him. A full circle moment considering what the Dutton family had used the spot for themselves. But who told Jamie? The bomb on the plane. One of the most frustrating unresolved plot points in Yellowstone dates back to Season 2 with the arrival of the ruthless Beck brothers. These villains, Malcolm and Teal Beck, had their sights set on taking over the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch to build a casino. Standing in their way were the Dutton family and real estate developer Dan Jenkins. The Becks became infamous for their cold-blooded actions, including an attack on the youngest Dutton. When Casey and a member of Jenkins' security team planted a bomb on their plane, it seemed like a fitting way to deal with such dangerous foes, but oddly enough, the bomb was never used. It's unclear why the explosive wasn't detonated, especially as the Becks continued to threaten the Duttons and escalate their attacks. The bomb, likely remote activated, could have been a pivotal plot point, but it simply vanished from the story. Instead, Casey confronts the brothers directly, killing them in a dramatic, action-packed showdown. The 4-6's ranch was a bad investment. Here's something many Yellowstone fans would be shocked to hear. 4-6's isn't happening. Okay, maybe it could still happen, but it's not happening anytime soon. Initially, Jimmy Herdstrom was planned as the central character of the spinoff. That plan was later amended to make way for Matthew McConaughey, and afterward, it was given back to Jimmy. Now we just don't know what's going on. Jimmy was introduced into the parent series as a drug dealer who needed John to lend him a hand after a deal went astray. Jimmy's grandfather was an old friend of John's, and the Dutton patriarch agreed to take him under his wing. This did, however, come with some constraints, and Jimmy was expected to live by John's rules. He broke several of those rules when he discovered his passion for bull riding, and ultimately asked John if he could stay at the 4-6's ranch. That pretty much set the stage for another spin-off series, one that fans had hoped would double as a de facto Season 6 of Yellowstone. Jimmy was a character who, broken off from the parent series, branched off into a new series and was still relevant in the timeline. Sheridan's MO has typically been to introduce spin-offs that are way off the parent series timeline, which has worked, to be fair. 4-6's would have been the only exception, but that never happened. What went wrong? Well, we have to take this back to Kevin Costner's impromptu exit from Yellowstone back in late 2022. This sent Sheridan and the writing crew into a panic because, well, John Dutton was the central character. In the midst of trying to make Yellowstone make sense without John and set the stage for other spin-offs, Sheridan turned to Jimmy Herdstrom's series. Now, Jimmy had once been promised a spin-off of his own, but desperate times call for desperate measures, right? It was now proposed that Matthew McConaughey would take up the role as the central protagonist in the main series without necessarily replacing John Dutton. This new character would be introduced in the finale and would be utilized in a series of his own, possibly 4-6's. Sounds easy enough, right? Wrong. Matthew claimed that despite a very long wait, Sheridan and his crew couldn't deliver a final script in time. Sheridan isn't wholly to blame here, although it would have been better if he hadn't burned that bridge with Matthew McConaughey. But the fact of the matter was that he needed to give Yellowstone, the show that started it all, a proper farewell before he could venture into a spin-off. That, unfortunately, meant saying farewell to the movie star. So far, however, there hasn't been any irreparable damage to 4-6's, right? An interesting point to remember here would be that in anticipation for a possible spin-off and retirement, Sheridan had already bought the original 4-6's ranch in Texas. That's right, the set was free because Sheridan had already dished out a couple of $1,000,000 for it. Again, no irreparable damage, right? They could just get a new star, maybe even run with the original idea to make Jimmy the lead, right? If it were that easy, we wouldn't be here today. What ended up happening next was a doozy, but try to keep up. there hadn't been any news coming out from the 4-6's ranch, and meanwhile, in Montana, Kevin Costner had walked out. Matthew McConaughey followed suit, and now we were back to square one. In the middle of it all, there was a writer's strike going on, and every production company in Hollywood shut down. Sheridan's was no different. This delayed production by a year, and fans tend to get agitated when that happens. To appease them, Sheridan promised a spin-off that would be set in modern times. All roads led to 4-6's, but the title was announced as The Madison, headed by Michelle Pfeiffer. Somehow, Sheridan had bypassed the entire concept of 4-6's and landed on a series that was entirely different. Well, different enough. It was still based on the cowboy verse that Sheridan is so well known for. However, this series follows Michelle's character as she navigates life in the Madison Valley after leaving New York following the death of her husband. Oh, an added bonus would be Suits' Patrick J. Adams, who's also starring in the show. That's all fun and dandy, but what about 4-6's? So far, nothing. It seems like maybe Sheridan will rejuvenate the series later on when he feels like it could serve as the perfect backdrop for Rip's storyline. After all, the Yellowstone finale saw Rip and Beth move out of Montana with a herd, waiting for their new adventure. But again, is that all 4-6's is good for? John's impeachment case. Sarah Atwood convinced Jamie that the only way to move forward was to get rid of John Dutton. In her mind, getting rid of someone meant getting rid of them permanently, which explains the hit she'd ordered on the Dutton patriarch. But to mellow it down to Jamie, she suggested they impeach him first. Jamie agreed and began a smear campaign against John. This didn't just result in a possible impeachment, but some of Jamie's accusations got John in hot water with investigative units. They began investigating him for killing endangered wolves. If you know wildlife crimes, that's about as serious as it gets. You can't try a dead man, but does that mean the case gets dropped just like that? Well, it's not supposed to. In John's absence, his closest accomplice would be tried, and we all know that he had plenty of them. This storyline, much like Angela Blue Thunder's arc, seemed important enough, but was ultimately sidelined after the show returned from its extended mid-season break. At the time, John's decision to invite his girlfriend, Summer Higgins, a passionate animal rights activist, to live with him, suggested that the wolves plotline would play a pivotal role in the second half of the season. However, this wasn't the case. The storyline about the wolves and the cover-up operation orchestrated by John and Rip to dispose of their bodies was abruptly dropped. Audiences never saw it revisited, leaving the subplot unresolved and fading into the background. That's all for this video. What are some unresolved plot holes that have been keeping you up at night? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you back here for another video.